Hey everyone, welcome to Watch It Paint It. In this video we are going to be painting up the Abomination, another Abomination from Zombicide 2nd edition. This is going to be the Patient Zero sculpt. I asked on YouTube via a poll if you would like to see some more, and this is what got the most votes, even over on a different game entirely, which I thought maybe you'd like to see a different game painted, mixing it up, but no, we're sticking with this one, which I'm super happy about because I am more than hyped to be painting some Zombicide right now. So guys, I'm going to put this out there right now. If this video over this weekend gets more than 100 likes, I'm going to paint another Abomination next. So hit that like button below. Now, that is important that I did mention about being hyped to paint this game. And one of the reasons I recommend starting with easy to paint miniatures, quick miniatures, quick wins, as I often describe on the channel, is it does get you hyped. You know, this did only take me 35 minutes and I was super hyped to go and paint another one afterwards. I was so glad that you voted for this actually. Now, let's get to actually, can I say actually? Let's just say actually like 500 times. Let's get to actually talking about painting this miniature. So apologies if you watched the previous video. Let's just cover some of the tools that I'm going to use. I'm going to start with talking about the hobby holder. It's the grip that I use to hold the miniatures in place. So just going to keep my fingers away from the paint and just make it a little bit easier to rotate. It comes with a handle as well, which I normally use, but this miniature is quite big. I will also be using some wash wizards just to hold my contrast paint. I'm going to be contrast painting this again if it wasn't obvious. The first one was so fast, I'm going to smash out some more. That's just to stop these getting knocked over and spilling paint everywhere. Finally, the brushes I'm primarily going to use are these Redgrass Games ones. Links for all this will be in the description below, guys, if you want to check any of this out. But they've got a size 2 and a size 00, and they're both very good at holding contrast paint and applying it to these miniatures. I will probably switch out this Saber 00. This is one of Game Envy's brushes, and just if there's any very, very small fiddly details, I'll bust out this. Now, let's get on to painting it. Once again, I have primed this in grey cere. I like how that makes the flesh look quite dead. It's quite cold, it doesn't look like it's alive flesh, and I enjoy that. If you did watch my previous video on painting the Abominacop, I painted it using Skeleton Horde. I am going to mix it up for this one. Two reasons. One, the artwork I think actually looks like it's a lot paler, a lot more like white, and the second one is you saw that flesh tone. Let's paint a different flesh tone so you can see what this looks like. It looks really pale and really white to me, so I'm going to use a coat, the one I can never pronounce, white, to paint on all of the flesh. I'm going to go give this a good shake and then we'll start applying it. So with that well and truly shaken up, nice and mixed now, I'm just going to slap it in a wash wizard. Boop. I'm going to grab my size 2 brush, and this is great. I mention it all the time that this brush is multiple years old. It is not in the best condition anymore, and yet I still use it all day, every day, and I think it's absolutely fantastic for contrast paint. It holds so much in its bristles, which just help me get through these larger sculpts really quickly. This is why I feel like we can almost, this is going to be so quick. We just don't need to be careful, right? I can just, go over some random bits, but will it matter? Because it'll pull away from those raised bits anyway and into the recesses, essentially just leaving the top colours as the primer, so that's fine. Also, I think this miniature isn't going to be as quick as the Abominacop, although I'm going to get a lot of this done with a couple of contrasts. I think there's a lot more different coloured, there's a bigger palette, isn't there, on this miniature. I'm going to have to switch in and out of quite a few colours, that sort of thing. I'm really interested to see how this white looks. Now, I did contemplate a couple of things. You guys have seen what Skeleton Horde looks like. I did think about just, that's his wrap, isn't it, which is slightly off-white. Again, yeah, it's not going to matter too much if I get it on that wrap, but I won't be painting those wraps white. But yeah, so as I was saying, you could see what it looks like in Skeleton Horde because I've already done one, but I also contemplated just mixing in a little bit of Skeleton Horde with this white, and the reason for that is because just to make it look a little bit more like the other zombies, because I'm guessing this zombie's been dead longer because it's Patient Zero, so it's lost all his all the colour in the skins, but I still wanted it kind of considered like making it look like a little bit like Skeleton Horde, like a really pale Skeleton Horde. So I've considered mixing this in white, but that's probably going to make it look a bit grey, which might be okay. And I also just considered really thinning it using that contrast medium. If anybody tries those, let me know how it comes out. But you're going to see what this one looks in just Apocalypse 3 white. Just neat. I think it's going to look different, very different to the rest, which ultimately that's what they've gone for in this particular game, isn't it? Lots and lots of different sculpts, 4 different abominations in the base, in the core set, which is so different to what I'm used to. Pretty cool. Struggling to see on his hands what's wrap and what's fingers. I think he's actually got more wrap on than I thought, but again, don't think it's going to matter. I should be able to paint over with this white quite easily. Just while I'm still painting this skin and quite early on, let me just mention some of the prep that I did for this. As I said, I've primed this in grey sear, but before that I did scrape off some of the worst mould lines. If you watch the channel a bit, you'll see I don't really care that much about mould lines. I only paint to play board games generally, and the odd, oh, here you go, there's a mould line still here. So it's a little bit annoying, but to me, it's not worth the effort because it's across all those bandages, so it's quite difficult to remove. And I'll never notice that once it's on the table. It's just sort of gone forever. However, he had a really bad one down this sort of dress that he's wearing here. And as you can see, I've totally just removed it from the top. Just got rid of that one. Missed a little bit underneath. You know, I'm not doing it perfectly, but the ones I can see and just look horrendous, I've just quickly removed them. The reason I was mentioning this is there's actually a little hole here just in his arm, and I could have filled that with green stuff, and I definitely considered it, but I just thought, hello blood, we'll just slap that in there because, you know, it's a zombie, and that is one way you can get around speeding up painting these imperfections. Just slap on a little bit of blood, no problem. One thing I've sort of missed is he's wearing a load of sort of braces and hospital attire, and they're also just in white, so he's got a sort of mask on here, which I pretty much covered anyway by just not being very careful. And then he's got this neck brace and this chest plate here. What else has he got? Probably this shoulder pad here as well. So yeah, it was paying off for me not being super careful, but ultimately he's got quite a lot of white on. I wonder if that's going to bite me in the butt as we move through painting this miniature, having his skin the same colour as a bunch of this apparatus that's kind of on him. He's got this leg brace here as well by the look of it. So yeah, like I covered most of it anyway because I just wasn't being very careful. But I need to paint this white. I think we'll probably end up brightening this up because I'm probably not going to touch his skin. His skin's ultimately done now. No highlights will be done on this skin, I don't think, unless it doesn't look good as it dries. So I'll spend some time making the rest of him look a lot brighter, all this random apparatus he's wearing. I changed my mind. I'm also just going to do all of his bandages in white too. I'm going to have to try and highlight these up more so they look different to his flesh tone, but it's making for a really quick base coat. I may end up regretting using white as his skin tone as well, given that he's got all these bandages to colour in and it just might all blur together. We'll see how it looks towards the end though, won't we? Before I start trying to deal with some of the troublesome bits dealing with his bandages now, that I need to work out how to differ from the skin. But before I go into that, and before I go into the cool bit, which we'll be painting the details on this is really going to bring this contrast, this quick paint job to life once I start painting on because this guy's full of tiny, tiny little details. It's going to eat a little bit of time, but none of it looks particularly difficult other than highlighting up a load of white. But while we've got contrast out and while I am ploughing paint onto this miniature and just absolutely is coming along leaps and bounds, you know, did the white, most of the miniature's done. Now doing this, what's it called? It's a hospital gown, isn't it? Now doing this hospital gown in a blue. This was a tough choice. I looked, there are a lot of contrast blues, and ultimately, you know, pick which one you would like. I've gone for Griff Charger Grey. It's more of a grey, but it's got a blue tone to it as well. I was trying to go for this sort of light blue. It's probably the most accurate to my eyes to the artwork, but there's all sorts. You know, any blue that you'd like is going to look like a nice hospital gown. This This to me looks like the artwork, but it's not a colour I'm enjoying how it's coming out. Obviously, you know, let it dry, give it a chance to work. But straight away, I'm wishing I just went with a blue, because blue makes me think of hospital gowns. This is, it's looking nice though. It's a nice colour, isn't it? Anyway, just do his hospital gown in a blue of your choice. And this is what Griff Charger Grey will look like on the Abomination. So that hospital gown's come out okay. I think I would have just preferred Talisa blue, you know, something just a bright blue, a light blue, something like that. That looks like a hospital gown to me. This has come out how I wanted it and matches to some extent the artwork. I did add a second coat, which really made it pop back out. Now, next I'm going to handle some work on these bandages. As much as I think this white's come out amazing, I like it on his skin. And I also think it's worked out well on the bandage as well as like the white, because they are white. They just need to look a little bit different in my opinion to add some variety to this model. And with that I'm going to use Army Painter's light tone, and I'm going to try and apply this very, very subtly. You can see I put quite a lot on and now I'm spreading it around. I just want a slight bit of yellowing in these bandages, not too heavy. I think in the artwork as well, if you look carefully, they are like slightly off-white, aren't they? Slightly creamy, slightly, I guess maybe a bit yellowy, something like that. But these are definitely going to add some variety to the colours here. Otherwise, it's just going to be white on white on white, because I've still got those sorts of braces that I need to paint on. He's got some bold white plastic braces for his neck and his head and things like that. And you know, it's just going to be too much white, isn't it? It's going to look boring by the end. And this isn't far off just painting like contrast, is it? Ultimately, I can paint exactly the same with Army Painter's washes as I can with Citadel's contrast. They just take many, many more coats. You have to sort of build them up. But I've achieved very similar results. There's a much smaller colour range though, so I wouldn't really advise it. I'm just saying they paint on almost the same. And by almost the same, I mean the same sort of format. It's really watery, easy coats. Other than the contrasting, I'm just filling time here, aren't I? Because this is going to take me ages to paint. But the contrasts are obviously sort of designed to be one thick coat, whereas the wash I'm actually going for one thin coat here. I just want to give a slight bit of colour. It's not immediately obvious. I've downsized to the 00 brush for this bit, painting on these individual bandages. Here I think I would go up to the the double two, just the 2 size brush for this large part of his wrist. Is the problem obviously is I'm trying to go for quite a thin coat here. I'm not confident I wouldn't just splurge a load on if I went to too large a brush, so it's going to take a little bit longer to paint this up, but I think I'll get a better result by the end. I should mention, just for filling some time while I'm painting, this is going to take a little bit of time with a small brush, but guys, are you aware we do have Instagram? I feel like not enough of you tag us in some of your finished paint results. I would love to see how you got on painting any of Zombicide, to be honest. Well, anything full stop, but Zombicide especially if you're doing a second edition like this, and even more so if you have followed along with this tutorial to paint up this particular Abomination. Would definitely love to see that. Right, that's enough bandage painting on camera. I think you've got the gist. I'll go and catch the rest off cam. There we go, the bandages all painted up. I think they look okay, and they definitely stand out from the skin now, so they've got that going for it. At a tabletop level, it's going to look a lot more appealing. I also painted on the electrodes sort of patches in the same colour as well, because they look like they match the bandages in the artwork. So we have one final date with contrast, one more easy mode bit to paint, and that is using Black Templar, and he's got these sorts of straps. It's going to need the 00 brush and a little bit of care as well. You could just paint this in normally. I'm just going to try and get one more quick, easy win out of these contrast paints. I'm probably going to do most of this off camera, I'm afraid, but I'll do you a couple so you get the gist. I'm going to have to go and paint the edges as well, but I'm just scared. I don't want to get it on his skin, and I will be able to do this. I just need it a little bit closer to my face than I can get it, just to really see what I'm doing. I'll catch all the edges. With all of these bandages and straps, you really want to get down the sides and that's going to give it a 3D look, make it look a lot better than just painting down the top level, something like that. Then he's also got black on all of these. What are these? Somebody let me know what these are in the comments. They're sort of like braces of some sort, aren't they? Sort of medical protection stuff. I've only seen it like round your neck braces, but also around the edge of these it's black, and he's got his neck one here, and he's got them on his forearm here. There's a few, and one on his hand. I'll bring that closer to my face. But he's basically got straps and these sort of bracer things all over him. There we go. So I've painted in all the black guys. Contrast or not contrast, that bit is going to be tricky. It's the first step into the world of a little bit of pain that we're going to have. It wasn't too bad, you know, it was doable, and contrast was just like any old black paint there, but it was nice and watered down for me. I'm just giving you a little look at it so you can take in everywhere I've got if you're interested in copying exactly that. What should we do next? Let's have a think. One quick think later, and I'm going to go for some Army Painter matte white. Now this is watered down, maybe 20% water. It's not super runny, it's not super dry either, just thin enough that I can move it around easily, but not so thin it runs anywhere we don't want it to. And we're going to paint up these bits that I don't know what they are, these kind of brace things. We'll start with his arm one just because it's nice and easy to get to. We're going to warm up to the more difficult ones. I'm just going to go for a thin coat, probably just the one coat, kind of like just highlighting it, making it pop back out, making it look white, like in the artwork, but also just to bring it off looking just like his skin. This one here is going to be super painful to get to. Small brush close to your face. Glasses off if you wear them, that will help. As long as you're short-sighted. If you're long-sighted, it won't help. Probably should have painted this before the black, actually. He's got this kind of bandage up here, hasn't he? So I'll get this in white. I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do with this. Might add a little wash to pop some colours out. But for now, we'll just highlight it up a little bit. It's kind of good, actually, just like that. He's got another one on his other shoulder. Let's do that while I got that in mind. Kind of just over brushing this on super lightly. Dry brush if you want, but I made my paint too wet. Well, it's not too wet, but it's too wet for dry brushing. And don't forget, we've got our secret weapon. It's a zombie. We've got blood. Anything that doesn't look great, any little mistakes, let's just splash some blood on it. Especially these bandages, they're probably oozing with blood. Ooh, we've got this chest plate. Oh, that's hard for my eyes to see right now. Do you know what? I might actually just, yeah, here we go. I'm just going to paint back on this chest plate. Trying not to get too much paint in those recesses, but it's super thin anyway. I'm just going to add the contrast back into those in a minute, rather than fidgeting around. That might have been a good idea from the beginning, actually. Paint all of these white bits white first, brighter than that grey sear. Oof, I think I missed a trick. Probably should have painted. Oh, I could go back and do them though. Maybe paint them all white. Let's try it with this. Let's let this dry, and I'll put some. I'll put the contrast paint, that Apoca 3 white back on top, because it might have been worth just painting them all white, and then just doing all of the skin and this at the same time, and it would come out differently because white's a lot brighter than the primer of that grey sear I used. Let's let that dry a second. Well, that is a little bit of a game changer, guys. Go and get your time travel machine, go back in time. Hopefully you watched this video before you've even started painting, but I've applied Apoca 3 white on top of that matte white there, and it looks better than I could have done. I've now gone, I've also done it on here, on this, the one on this hand as well, and I think that's looking absolutely fine. It's now white with a little bit of shade, a lot easier than trying to paint white on top of it. With all these hard to reach bits. So I've just painted this bit in white, this bit in white. I've finished off those two bandages on the top of his shoulders, just going to leave them as they are. I've also painted his mask in white here, and then he's got this little bit under him that I've caught some white on. I'm now going to apply that Apoca 3 white, this bad boy again. I'm going to put that just on all of these white bits. I'm going to leave his mask. I think that looks quite nice, highlighted up in white. I'm going to leave these bandages as well, but all of these braces, just going to give a little coat just over the top. I would advise doing this, prime it in grey sear, paint the white on first, Apoca 3 white everything, then later, you know, add those black straps. That's going to be a lot easier. Learn from my mistakes. take that with you. Just while that's drying, I'm just going to get a bit I missed earlier. I'm going to use a bit of Templar black, just painting his disgusting little toenails here. They're kind of hard to see on this sculpt. Not as bad as the Abominacop though. They just disappear on these little ones, don't they? There's nothing there. Just paint them in, fake them in. I'm not sure how I'm going to paint these little, are they like IV bags either, but I'm going to start by painting that label on both of them, just back in white, make them pop back out. I might paint these as bags of blood. That's crossing my mind, like something's gone wrong or he's in the middle of a transfusion. But I think it's supposed to be IV bags and they should be clear really, so leaving them like this white might be the best I can do, to be honest. But yeah, get those labels on white so we can work from there. Let us start really bringing this miniature together now with the actual painting. No more contrast, no more quick washes. Let's do some old-fashioned painting. So I'm going to use Army Painter's rough iron. This looks pretty metallic down in the artwork along this leg brace that he's wearing. So I'm going to carefully paint this in. Small brush, large patience. Just really take your time with this. There's a lot of edges and delicate bits to catch. Well, I told a lie, guys. I could not keep away from the contrast paints. He's got all of these little inputs going into him, and I just saw in the artwork, they don't line up to where he is in the sculpt. They're all just different colours. So I just grabbed 8 or so brightly coloured contrast paints that I had and just painted them up at random. I'm going to use a little bit of dark silver. This is machine gun metal, and this is to paint in that UV stand. So I'm going to catch the top half. Also, it looks like in the artwork the bottom half's wooden, but should it be? I don't know, maybe. In the UK, or at least anywhere I've ever seen, this whole thing's just like a big metal pole. So I'm going to paint the bottom bit using the same silver as well. I think it'll look good. Ultimately, probably going to cover all this bit down here in blood anyway, pouring out of him. So it's kind of irrelevant. Maybe I should paint the blood on first. Nah. Make it look realistic. Don't spend too long on this bit though if you're going to cover it in blood like I'm likely to. I'll also, while I've got this dark silver out, I'm just going to highlight up a little bit of this leg brace. Just make these bolts, well, I don't know if they're bolts, but these rivets just look a bit silver. Try and just catch around the edge as well, a little bit of edge highlighting. I think that'll just help it make it look a little bit more metallic. Even though rough iron is, you know, it's a metallic paint, it is shiny. I just think it blends in super easy. It's a bit, it can easily go unnoticed. What on earth are we supposed to do with this syringe up here? It's so lacking in detail. No idea how to make this even noticeable. I'm going to paint the top of the syringe in silver and the press button in silver. And I can't even see where any of this is. There's no detail. Honestly, I consider just snipping it off at the skin level and just painting that on as a bit of skin. Because making this be anything seems like it's more effort than it's worth, but let's try putting a bit of silver on. I'll do what I can, but genuinely considered snipping that off. Guys, send me some help. I think I need an intervention. I cannot stop using these contrast paints. They're back out again, this time Basilican Grey. I was going to paint up all of these pipes, tubes coming out of him just using normal grey, and then I was like, why? Why don't I just use some more contrast and just make it do some of the work? Because they're round, they're gonna be difficult to highlight up. I'm probably going to use a little bit of wash on them, and that wash is going to run a little bit onto the skin anyway. So just using a little bit of contrast paint as carefully as I can, it's probably going to get about the same effect that I could pull off anyway. Catch all of these tubes coming in and, well, coming out of him, in of him. No, I guess they're going in and out. Who knows what they're doing? I feel like he's got too many on. But yeah, just going to go around with some Basilican Grey and finish those off. Those tubes have come out a little bit darker than I wanted them to actually. Oh well. I could just highlight them up. But yeah, I wanted a sort of light grey look to them. I think they should be clear really, but there's too much clear white translucent skin and all this stuff going on, so at least it's got some dark variety to it. Anyway, making this syringe look like it's got a little bit of liquid left in the bottom. For that I'm using more contrast. I honestly can't put it down. Just a little bit Thalassa blue there just in the bottom. I don't think it looks particularly good, but it is what it is. Just going to try and add a little bit of colour to these IV bags. For that I'm going to use Army Painter's light denim. Super watered down. Can you see how wet that is? I'm just really sitting it on the surface. Just going to try and get this bag just to look a little bit blue. I have to get around the outside too. I'm trying to leave all the shading in place. I think that Poker 3 white has done a good job. So now it's just about, there we go. I think that's how I want it to look. Just slightly blue. Not too much. I might do 2 coats because this is going to dry, and it's going to dry a lot more see-through than it looks now. It's going to be a lot lighter once it dries. So I'll just do however many coats it needs off camera. But yeah, this is probably something like 60-70% water and just a little bit of light pale blue. It's not just light, but it's really pale as well. I'm not even trying to be too careful going near the edges or anything. Just trying to let it, that Poker 3 white, do all the shading. This is just a hint that there's more to it than the skin colour. There we go. So he's got a couple of things sticking out of him. Not really sure what this is. You can paint this whatever you want, but I'm going to use wildwood. I think it's going to be a bit of wood sticking out of him or something, but you could paint it as a piece of metal. I'm going to be adding some blood, so it's kind of irrelevant what I do. Just putting some colour on it. Again, contrast because it's kind of irrelevant. Probably have quite a bit of blood splatting out of this wound here anyway. It's a nice place to add a little effect. A little bit sticking out down here as well. I think something, I don't know what this is, but where this tube's going in and something's coming out. I have no idea what that would be. But what it is today, again, a little bit of blood, probably not going to matter what that is. It's just going to look like something's jabbed in him, protruding out of him. Doesn't even need to be neat around here. Doesn't really even need to be neat around here. I'm catching on those tubes, but blood. We'll sort this all out in a minute. And finally, I just want to add, well, finally for painting, I just want to add a little bit of a highlight to this UV stand that's sticking through him. For that, I'm going to use a light silver. This is Claymore Blade, getting by the Army Painter. I'm just going to catch this little ring that's running around it in a bright silver, and a few little pointy out bits at the top like so. And while we've got it, let's just paint on this spike, make it a bit shinier on the actual point. But blood's coming guys. I did paint these little UV IV bags with a little bit of silver here, so I'll just catch the ends, just brighten them up. I was just adding a little bit of interesting, a little bit of detail. So the artwork's got just a little bit of orange on this IV label here, so I'll just use a bit of prison jumpsuit, just a bright orange, just to add a little bit of colour. We'll do the same on this top one up here. If I can get my hands, get a really steady grip, rest your hands on the table. I'm wobbling a bit because I'm extending my reach a bit further than I want to. I want to be a bit closer, but just giving you an idea of what I'm doing, something like that. Well, guys, we are just about there. So I've got a few more steps I'm going to do off camera because I'm going to cover them in other videos anyway, but I wanted to see what it looked like before I went and made those final steps. I'm going to add some blood. I've got a little video just talking about that. That's going to be to your preference, really. You'll see it after I've done it. I'm going to paint in the base as well. Again, I'll cover that in a video by itself because I'm going to paint all the bases the same for my Zombicide miniatures. And then I'll paint him in some eyes. I did them black Templar there. I'm going to paint them a little bit white like it is in the artwork. So it'll be back in a minute, completely finished hopefully. And that is it, guys. As I mentioned, I went and added the blood. I'll do a separate video on that if you've not seen this coagulated blood. And I also added the base, which I've done as a sort of roadway style, which I'm going to do all my zombies. And this one I actually added some street furniture, a bin bag, some rubbish, just because it's a big base and I wanted to add a little bit of extra detail. Speaking of details, that sort of thing, plus that detail step really takes these contrast paint jobs to the next level. I think the contrast is actually painting something that I would basically paint in a similar way using washes and highlights anyway, so it would come out looking quite contrasty. But it's all in one go. The amount of time it saves is phenomenal. I think the skin actually looks better than I could have painted that for real, so that's really paid off there. I do recommend this as another great miniature to start with. You are going to have to take your details sort of to the next level. They're a lot harder on this one than the Abominacop, but this is a lot more fun to paint. It's a lot more interesting. You can really have quite a lot of fun with it. Thank you ever so much for watching. As I mentioned, hit like below. If we get 100 likes in the first weekend, I'll just go and crack out that next abomination for you. Thank you all ever so much for watching. I'll see you again next week. Let us know in the comments below. Blah, 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 blah. Let's